Let's start. Good evening, everyone, and thank you and welcome. I am Vanessa Vovor, and I'm delighted to be moderating today's session organized by ZD Circle, entitled Demystifying Diaspora Angel Investing from Curiosity to Confidence. Just a short intro, I am a consultant and facilitator working at the intersection of climate, cities, and social inclusion in African context. And I also had the pleasure of joining ZD Circle's Diaspora Angel Investor Fellowship last year, where I've seen firsthand how powerful this kind of support and community can be, especially for those of us in the diaspora looking to invest with purpose and clarity. So tonight, the program is not about overwhelming you with technicalities and jargon, but really about offering you the opportunity to hear about real stories, lessons learned, and actionable insights, whether you just started considering the idea of investing or you're already an investor. So I actually invite you to introduce yourself in the chat. You'll see there's a little chat box if you're not familiar with it. So please feel free to drop your first name and the city you're joining us from, so we also get a sense of who's in the room. And please do not hesitate to already pop up your questions. Do not wait until the Q&A. You're more than welcome to share your thoughts and questions throughout the session, and we'll make sure to have ample time to answer them towards the end of the session. So the more interactive, the better, especially since so far we are I would just like to invite you to mute yourself. I think I'm just gonna, yes, mute. Please mute yourself. Feel free to turn on your camera so we can also put a face to the names. But just when you're not speaking, mute yourself so we don't have any technical issues or echo. So yeah, let's make it nice. Let's make it interactive. And without further ado, let's first warm up with a quick question, a quick poll, and I'll ask the ZD team to maybe put up the chat, the poll to pop up so the participants can see the question and answer it. Does it show yet? Not yet. So in the meantime, what I'll do is I'll just read the question out loud, and participants, you can just answer in the chat. That's also fine. I just wanted to know, how would you describe your current, oh, here it goes. We have it here. How would you describe your current experience with angel investing? Are you just exploring? You have the idea but have not made any move yet? Have you already invested once or twice? Or do you consider yourself already an active investor? So feel free to put up your answer so we know what we have in the room. The scores keep changing as people fill it in, which is quite interesting. And I see that we have a majority of people who are just exploring, who have not been on the investing journey just yet. So I think this session is going to be right for you. Very interesting, quite a good mix. But we still have 83%, I see. Is it 83? But a majority. Perfect. Sounds good. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for sharing. And as I said, I think you made the right choice by joining us, because this is the perfect introduction if you're just considering, just exploring. And so before we dive into today's session and our panel discussion, and before I introduce our fantastic speakers, please allow me to just take a moment to introduce our host, ZD Circle, the force behind today's session. So maybe, Monica, if you can share, move to the next slide. Thank you. Perfect. So ZD is a global platform designed to support diaspora-led development by empowering both high potential entrepreneurs as well as investors, and also through the ZD Co-op that also allows channeling diaspora direct investment into African startups and SMEs. Next slide. The model of ZD is to basically support angel investing and diaspora angel investors who, by providing them with the trainings and the opportunities and empowering them to feel well equipped to invest. Then once we have this pool of angel investing ready and feeling ready and equipped, ZD also offers matchmaking by connecting the trained investors with identified SMEs on the African continent or diaspora-led businesses. And finally, ZD also offers a co-op, which serves as an investment vehicle by offering the opportunity to the investors to pool their funds together into the SMEs. Next slide. And finally, in terms of programs, ZD offers entrepreneurship boot camps for the entrepreneurs. As I mentioned, a fellowship for diaspora angel investors to train them, and an investment vehicle for pooled funding with the ZD Co-op. So whether you want to learn, connect with like-minded diaspora angel investors, or invest, ZD Circle helps you take the next step with the proper support and the proper structure. And this session falls right into that track by also giving you opportunity to be introduced and connect and hear real stories, whether or not you have joined ZD activities yet. So thanks, Monica. We can go back to the backdrop. And now I would like to take a moment to first introduce our two guest speakers who we have the pleasure to have with us tonight. Maybe if they can turn on their camera already while I just introduce them first. So we have with us Katharina Diehl. She's a sustainability and scaling expert at Harvest Plus. She's based in Nairobi, Kenya. She's also happened to be a founding board member of the ZD Circle Co-op, where she brings deep insight into how diaspora capital can support agricultural innovation and systemic change, as well as how to build viable investment frameworks around that. We are also joined by Olusola Osinoiki. Sola is the founder of the Josh Leadership Group with a career spanning tech, HR, leadership development, and startup advisory. He has worked with blue chip companies, fintech disruptors alike, and today he brings the unique perspective of someone who's been both an investor and a founder, which will help us explore the reality behind the expectation on both sides. So a warm welcome and big thank you to both of you for joining us tonight and offering us the opportunity to discuss with you and hear from real life experiences. So I would like to start with you, Katharina, to set up the stage a little bit. And to start off, could you please tell us a bit more about ZD? How does it support diaspora investors? What do you see as its unique value? And what made you personally want to be involved?
Thanks very much, Vanessa. Yeah, thanks for the nice introduction. I work in Nairobi. I work for Harvest Plus for an international research institute, and I'm a scaling expert focused on an innovation called biofortification, which means that seed and crop and food have more nutrition. And let me start with an example from Kenya, because that will lead me to why I wanted to join and what ZD Circle offered or can offer to investors and people who are interested in investment. So as an example, Kenya in 2024 raised $638 million in capital investment, in private investment. And that is 29% of all the startup funding that goes into African countries, or even over 80% of the capital funding in Eastern Africa. And much of this is driven by opportunities in climate tech, in e-mobility, and renewable energies, and fintech. A lot of it is green or agriculture related. But when we look at the global picture, then we see that only 25% of the pre-seed funding or the seed investments go to African-only founder teams. And at the higher funding levels, like what they call Series A to E level, it's only 13%, and at IPO level, it's only 1%. And in terms of diversity, you can see a similar trend when it comes to female-only founder teams that were allocated less than 3% of total private investments in Africa. So obviously in Kenya, Kenyan-only founder teams face some structural barriers in accessing global venture capital, and these barriers are also higher for women founders. Now, there are studies that look into that, and also for example, at my institute, we look into why is that so, and there are different assumptions. For example, that global investment chains are shaped by Anglo-Saxon standards, that investors, this is a very relevant assumption, that they're often led by socio-demographic identifiers. They like to find founder teams that mirror themselves, and with money coming from the US or from Europe, they will look for founder teams that may kind of mirror their socio-demographic composition. Rather, and this has a higher impact to investment decisions than the meritocratic attributes of the teams or the human and skills-related characteristics of the founder teams. So, of course, then also on the business sides, some of the businesses may not have the desirable social networks to connect with relevant investment teams and attract more significant investments. So why is that so? What are the challenges? Why do we not have a more diverse field of investors to kind of mitigate those effects, no? And so, yeah, one of the reasons can be that it's often unlikely to raise the volumes of investment needed. So when you look at a global understanding of attribution of investment, then pre-seed or pre-seed funding would kind of address something between 50,000 or 100,000 US dollars. And seed funding would then continue like between 100,000 and 200,000, and then go up in Series A and B funding to 2.5 million, for example. So those are numbers that may make people hesitate to involve in investment structures. And on the other hand, companies may not be investment ready, meaning they cannot address the expectations that investors have when they want to put 100,000 US dollars or euro or whatever into a small business startup. And then also overall angel investment that you've mentioned before is in African countries in early stages. So there's probably also a lack of knowledge. People don't know where to start or where to enter or where to connect. I think, yeah, at that point where people don't know how to connect or how to start, ZD Circle offers a unique opportunity in offering a platform, in offering a network, and offering an entry point to connect individually and in groups. So you can connect individually, you can form groups of teams, And within those teams, then look at small businesses or look at investment seekers and join their journey from a first pitch and learn with them until it comes to an investment agreement. And because we are a diverse group, we can look at the investment journeys in different countries, with different founder teams in different localities, maybe at different ages. So it becomes an opportunity to really involve in a diverse portfolio of opportunities. So by joining ZD Circle, I can become a member and I can become part of a network of angel investors that already have experience perhaps in their home countries or in their host countries. And by joining that network, I can benefit from ZD Circle in a way that they can expose me to small business entrepreneurs or scaling in, entrepreneurs that want to scale. And I can invest in ventures that have the potential to positively impact maybe also the local microeconomies. So I can think of the investment as having a benefit and an impact in the home or in the host country and in maybe the surrounding sector that I want to invest in. I think the most important thing is that by offering this platform, and probably we'll talk more about the characteristics, ZD Circle lowers some of the barriers that potential investors would assume by its structure. And some of it you've already mentioned in the introductory slides. The vision is to really empower people to become investors, to enable them to participate in an investment environment through this network platform. And the three models that ZD Circle offers here is quite important because through offering investor trainings, I, as a member, can learn what to expect, how to invest, the questions of how to do it, how to enter it, how to get that exposure to businesses, but also perhaps how to lower my risk. What do I look out for? How do I assess companies or businesses and startups? And at the end, how do I create my portfolio? Do I maybe not to invest only once, but to kind of diversify my investment portfolio and look at different companies, different sectors, and how to do that best? And then the second model with the SME matching is that ZD Circle in parallel offers entrepreneurship bootcamps and thereby has a very good basis to connect trained investors with those businesses that have gone through the bootcamp, and we have now learned a common language to interact and to find, once the businesses have completed their bootcamp, they can pitch and we can be connected to them and ask questions about their development journey. So I get this exposure. And thirdly, the investment platform itself, where as a member, you have access to a vehicle of trained investors, of identified SMEs, and via this vehicle that includes, for example, a digital platform where I can track my investments, where I can track the projects that I've invested into or the valuation of the company and so on. We get to channel the investments into the SMEs in different countries. And that helps, for example, also with how to convert euro into a local currency, questions that as a newcomer to investment, I might have, like, how does this even work? And this infrastructure is there. So yeah, I was a newcomer to investments and I found myself within this network. And I found it very interesting because we sort of co-developed this platform as members also, and we can involve in make it kind of tailor-made to our needs. and learn about, the key elements of investing, and thereby further shape ZD Circle Co-op. What I think is very important is that the investments can be done in groups. So that reduces a large part of perhaps the risk assumption, or the assumption that I may not have enough skills or experience to invest, because we can now, within that group, share our knowledge, share our experience. Me, coming from agriculture and from ecology, I could perhaps say something about the environmental impact. I could maybe say something about the structure of the company. Someone else may be much more adept to say something about markets and sales strategies, and someone would be able to say something about the financial potential. So now we can exchange, and we can do due diligence together, and we can, share our experience from particular sectors, or generally in business development, while ZD Circle can also offer expertise additionally. So when I started working in Nairobi, I found this, I found the advertisement, and I actually joined the very first cohort, training cohort in 2021. And I had previously founded 2 companies in Germany, and I was looking for a way outside of my professional network to connect with startups, being interested in business development, being interested in how do these things work here. So I joined basically to connect with startup companies, and to make use of my skills and experience, but also to learn about investments and to see how markets can be built, how the infrastructure for, I said I come from like seed and crop and food, so how can those markets be built from a different direction, and how can I contribute to it without having maybe 250 million that I can invest for a huge, as an investor. Let me leave it there, and
Thanks.
Open to questions, of course, anytime, but Vanessa, you continue.
Thanks a lot. Maybe I have just a follow-up question, because I think you covered a lot of the questions I already have by telling us a little bit more about the issue with the lack of capital for African-led businesses and female founders. But you also mentioned that on the investor side, there's often a lack of knowledge. Sometimes they hear about the initial investment, we think of $50,000, $100,000. Could you, maybe for those who are newer in the space, explain just a little bit? You've been yourself part of the fellowship. How angel investing could look like for a diaspora investor in very concrete terms. And what are the often misconceptions that you notice from people that maybe prevents them from even engaging or enrolling in the fellowship, thinking, oh, I don't have 50K to invest. So if you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, angel investment is the term used for investing at very early stages of business development. So when you look at businesses, it may start from 1 or 2 people coming together, or out of a family business, or out of an idea that is developed in research. And usually the teams are quite small, and they will probably start off developing, putting in their own initial money, putting in perhaps funds from their surrounding, from family or friends, or grants, even from, if it comes from research, that is very often the case. And at this early stage of development, it's usually about finalizing a product, testing a product, thinking about a market entry strategy, like who are we going to sell to, how are we going to do this, and basically developing that product for a specific market. Usually in this development stage, there's something like a capital gap. It's very often referred to as a valley of death in literature, where your own funds run out, but you are not advanced enough to kind of look for a huge venture capital investment. And it's also a stage where things can go up or down. So it's basically characterized as a stage of high risk, but also of high potential. So if you think of the big disruptive innovation, someone who would have invested very early into Airbnb, where you would not maybe have known that this can disrupt the tourism industry. This is a classic example of very early investment where things can have a huge potential and really influence a sector. But of course, probably there were other ideas around at that time of development which were not as successful. So it's connected to kind of a high risk and a high potential investment. It's also connected to an early stage of business development in comparison to buying stocks at the market and investing via funds there. So a lot of motivation comes from, why do people invest in that stage? Why would you make up your mind to put your money into something that is not easy to assess? So very often the motivation is to help a friend, because you're personally connected or because you're professionally connected, and your interests are in that direction, and you want to help entrepreneurs, or because you're invited or acquainted to an angel network. Particularly in ZD, people mentioned, for example, that they want to play a role in the entrepreneurial process, that they want to learn more about how businesses develop and be connected. Others mentioned that there is some fun and some satisfaction in being involved in that development, that it's something to learn from, for example, as well. And perhaps also to create a network for oneself or a profile in a specific sector. And many mentioned that they are motivated out of a sense of social responsibility. And this is probably also a focus of ZD, targeting diaspora investors, that people would like to do something for their home or for their host countries, and connect with like-minded people, and do something for business development in specific countries. So I think I mentioned all of it.
Thanks. Yes, that definitely helps and clarify in the motivations of starting investing beyond just the financial gain potentially, but also all the other co-benefits. I have one last question for you, Katharina. You mentioned earlier, and I mentioned in your intro, you work in the agricultural sector. You said you work with seeds and crops, and you analyze. And I feel like for a lot of us in the diaspora, agriculture can sometimes feel like as a risky sector, or a sector we're very disconnected from. So maybe a bit complex to evaluate if you don't work in the field, what would be a good innovation or a good opportunity there. What would you say to demystify that? And where do you see a lot of potential on the continent?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Agriculture, I think, is really a special sector for investing. I could come up with some reasons for that. So, for example, if you think of like just farming, then of course starting up a business in that field, it requires investments, but they're not always innovative or have disruptive potential. So an investor looking for something like that, like a disruptive innovation or a technology, would be confronted with someone who wants to build a very stable and solid agricultural business, and that might not feel very exciting. On the other hand, it can be a very solid long-term investment, even to invest directly in farming. But of course, when we talk about agriculture, we also have new technologies that come into the field. Many of those are pushed, for example, from research institutions where they were developed, or even by government, because they want to have certain criteria in agriculture. It's food, yeah? So government is always involved in agriculture more than in maybe some other sectors. A bit like health, where government also has an interest. So very often the technologies or the innovations are not pulled by market demand. And that makes it very difficult to assess for investors who are used to looking at target markets and saying what could be the potential in a specific target market. They require different strategies and more of a push strategy, more of a market development strategy, where we need to basically create the market from something that is coming from research, or that is coming from a societal requirement. I think what is also relevant is that as investors, most people are trained to look at the economic market environment. And in agriculture, we have another layer, because we have the ecologic knowledge that is needed perhaps to assess perhaps the location, the socio-demographic characteristics of the target group. For example, yeah, we had a project in agriculture with a grant giver that had a very linear understanding of how an innovation should be adopted, but the weather didn't play into our hands. So 1 year if in another sector you can specifically say what you want to do in 1 year and where you want to be at the end, this can turn out very different in agriculture, because you have those environmental or ecologic impacts that are not really foreseeable. And then I think is particularly also for African countries, 80% of agriculture are smallholder farmers, and they have their individual needs, they have different crops, they have, so overall it's not an easy market to characterize or even address with a specific strategy. On the potential side, I think there are numerous but undervalued, more or less. So one of the big issues that we are looking at is nutrition, because we can't invest too much more into and using more area and space for growing food. So we are now looking more at how do we get access to foods that have the nutrition that we need, the yields that we need on the space that is available, and that can sustain the countries. And as the global impacts are getting more, the countries are now also more aware to be more self-sustaining and not dependent on trade. I think food is a big field, particularly I'm interested in where traditional crops, for example, are adapted to modern lifestyles. Kind of an example would be noodles coming up made out of traditional crops, cassava or sweet potato or lentils, or yeah. So foods that are kind of drifting out of our focus, but can be adapted, and there's a lot of innovation that is possible and the potential for investment.
So plenty of opportunities still in the agricultural sector. Thanks a lot,
Yeah,
Katharina.
thank you.
Again, thank you, because this was also as to say, agriculture is not the only sector that through the ZD Circle Co-op and invests in, but obviously I couldn't help but ask, because of your background and your passion also for the topic, to demystify this a little bit for us. So thanks a lot for your insights.